Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On the MTC call sheet today, we're going to talk about the state of the NFC South. Now, this is a division that I like to call the undivision, and I'm going to explain that and why. And Chain Gang Chat, of course, I'm going to answer your questions via social media. And in my non-serious narrative, there's a term that so many people are using on these big national networks right now, and the term is championship defenses. I have no problem with the term being used. I just have a problem with the teams the term is being attached to. And last but not least, I don't trust Jacksonville. Point blank, period. All that and more here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Kick it off with the opening toss. So what do I mean when I say this is the undivision? Or you could even call it the underdivision. Think about the Carolina Panthers. I think the Carolina Panthers have been underdeveloped, okay, in the past 4 or 5 seasons. I think the New Orleans Saints have been underwater, and that's dealing with their salary cap situation. I think the Atlanta Falcons have underperformed, and I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been undervalued. That's why I call this division the underdivision. I think a lot of people see this division as wide open, and they feel like this division is anybody's to win, and they laugh and mock this division. And the only thing that this division has is the Tampa Bay Buccaneer team that's won a division 4 years in a row. And even when they didn't win the division, they won a Super Bowl in the last 5 years. Now, that's holistically, macro, what I want to say about this division. But let me talk about specific teams. Let me start with the Falcons first. When I say the Falcons have underperformed relative to their talent, I don't think anybody can dispute that. And I'm not saying that this team hasn't been well run. I think Arthur Blank hasn't been a guy that gets in the way. I think they've tried to find good coaches. They've had Mike Smith, right? And then they had Dan Quinn. And the only thing people remember about Dan Quinn is that he blew a huge lead in the Super Bowl to the Patriots. And they're trying to find the rhythm now with Raheem Morris. But this is what I've known about the Falcons. And this is what I want to tell everybody else. Do you know since they lost the Super Bowl in 2016 to the Patriots, they've gone 56-75 in terms of their record. A 43% winning percentage, have not had a 500 record since then, and have not been in the playoffs. 7 straight losing seasons for the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm sitting here telling you that I love what they're building in Atlanta. I love the foundation that they're creating. I love the identity that they're creating, because this team hasn't lacked in terms of having an offensive line that can run block. They've had one of the best rushing offenses for years. One of the best offensive lines specifically for the run in years. They went and got a quarterback to try to span the tide for the next 2 or 3 seasons in free agency to make them better, and they went and drafted their future. They went out of free agency and made great moves like acquiring Jesse Bates from the Cincinnati Bengals. They went and drafted guys like Jalen Walker and James Pierce out of the SEC, the toughest conference in America, to help in a defense that hasn't been able to get after the quarterback and hasn't been able to stop the run. They've made the right moves. And I think they've been making the right moves for years. I just think they haven't had the gene to win close games. And in a league where the margin of victory is so slim, to me it's one of the best qualities that a team can have, and the Falcons haven't had it. So I think they've underperformed since going to the Super Bowl, and I think the numbers bear that out. But I truly think that they're a team that is building in the right direction. Carolina, man. So the Panthers, to me, have really been underdeveloped. And I think a lot of people don't look at the Carolina Panthers in this vein. I truly think they've had a plan in the past 5 or 6 years. I truly think they did, because in 2020, they drafted Derrick Brown out of Auburn, right? The defensive end, depending on the defense that you play. And he was a star at Auburn, and they said, hey, he'd be a star at Carolina. We can build along the defensive front where teams win championships. He's had 8 sacks in 5 seasons. Now, again, I don't say that because sacks mean everything. Pressures are a big part of the game, and they matter as well. But to get 8 sacks in 5 seasons from a guy you took in the first round, in your opinion, he hasn't been developed and hasn't performed the way you want him to. The next year, they take J.C. Horn. So first they want to get a guy, right, who can get after the quarterback, and they want to go get what they consider to be a stopgap corner and an all-pro caliber corner and a shutdown corner in J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, and who's dealt with injuries in the past season and only has, 5 interceptions in 5 seasons. So you're not a shutdown corner if you get 1 interception per year. Again, breakups matter. Tackling at the cornerback position matters, but for where they were drafted, they haven't gotten the production that they wanted to get. But then they go out and draft an offensive lineman, Ikem Ekwonu, back in 2022. They go and get Bryce Young with the first overall pick in 23. And then in consecutive drafts, they've gotten Xavier Leggett and T. McMillan. And they went out of free agency and completely solidified that offensive line, which is why you saw them get better. So they had a plan. The plan just didn't work out because they didn't seem to get developed. And now it seems like they have a new plan to build around their quote-unquote hopeful franchise quarterback. Carolina is not a team that will vie for a playoff spot, but they have a plan. And I think that matters in the NFL, even if the production isn't there yet. The New Orleans Saints, in my estimation, have been underwater, okay? And I say they've been underwater because this is a team that has only $20 million coming into this year in free agency in terms of cap space. It's just not enough. And they've got over 50-something million in dead cap space, which means they're paying $50 million to people who are no longer on this roster. Now, Sean Payton saw this coming, which is why Sean Payton created a mass exodus, just of himself, from New Orleans to the booth, and then from the booth to Denver. I'm not tripping on Sean Payton. He saw the writing on the wall. It's the same thing with Tom Brady left New England to go to Tampa Bay. He knew that they wouldn't be as competitive because they were strapped salary cap-wise. So the Saints have 4 first-rounders that are slated to start on their offensive line this year. 4 first-rounders. That's because they have to build through the draft because they don't have the cap space to go out and get top-tier free agents. So Kellen Moore coming in his first season, understanding that now you've got Brandon Staley, who was not a good head coach at all, but who can be a good defensive coordinator and has been. This team has a lot of work to do. Is it going to be Spencer Rattler? Is it going to be Tyler Shuck? What is Alvin Kamara going to be? Nobody knows. That's where the Saints are. They've been underwater. Now can they swim upstream and try to tread water so they can be a viable team just growing, because I don't think they'll be a contender in the NFC South either for the next couple seasons. And now I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because this is a team I feel like has been supremely undervalued, pure and simple. Now, why is that? I don't know. I can't tell you. But what I will tell you is I think one of the biggest reasons is Jason Light. You know who he is? He's just a general manager. So while Howie Roseman gets a lot of credit for building the Philadelphia Eagles, which he should, right? And Brett Veach for the Chiefs gets a lot of credit for building that team, which he should. I really think that Jason Light can be seen as a top 3 GM. Because when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl, he went and got Tom Brady. He went and got Gronk. He went and got AB. He went and got Ndamukong Suh. He went and got Shaq Barrett free agency. Under his reign, he's drafted Antoine Winfield Jr., who's been an all-pro secondary member. They went and drafted Tristan Wirfs, who's been an all-pro left tackle. They went and drafted guys like Mike Evans, who is going to be a Hall of Famer. He went and drafted Chris Godwin, who has one of the best drop percentage rates in the NFL. He's drafted studs, and they've brought studs in via free agency, which is why this team has won 4 straight divisions. This is why this team is in the top 5 in terms of playoff winning percentage the last 5 years. And this is why this was a team, other than the Philadelphia Eagles, that has beaten the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been severely undervalued, and I think a lot of that is because people look at them and they don't think that they're a star-type location. They've only been a star organization, and I don't think that's continuing to change. Last thing I'll say is this. If you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the rest of these teams in this division, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons, Tampa Bay has had the best transition plan. What do I mean by that? The Falcons went from Matt Ryan and Dan Quinn to, the Saints went from Sean Payton and Drew Brees to, the Panthers went from Ron Rivera and Cam Newton to, and the Bucs have gone from Bruce Arians and Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles. That's obviously been the best combination of head coach, quarterback in the division, and it's buried itself in them winning the division 4 straight years. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be your social media questions on the Chain Gang Chatter. Back when we move the chains, right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chains. And before we get to answering your social media questions via the Chain Gang Chatter, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for hosting Move the Chains. I also want to thank you, the fans. No matter the platform in which you're watching the show, you are very supportive. People come up to me all the time and say how much they enjoy the show, and I truly appreciate you. Also, I want to say shout out to the best production crew in the business. As always, they get the job done here at Fox 54 and on the social media pages. Shout out to the best production crew in the business. And you've seen a QR code at the lower third of this show recently. So if any of you guys out there watching are hurting either financially, mentally, spiritually, or physically, make sure you scan that QR code. All right, having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for the Chain Gang Chatter. All right, so this is a part of the show where I just get to answer questions and answer thoughts and comments that I see all over social media, and today's no different. Let's get to my first question. All right, what NFC team needs to get off to the best start this year? I'm going to say Minnesota, and it's not because I don't believe in the Vikings. I truly do. I think there's a lot of conversation about every other team in the NFC North, and the Vikings seem to just not be talked about. But this is a team that has a head coach who's a brilliant offensive coach, and they have a defensive coordinator who's a brilliant defensive coordinator. Top to bottom, this team is going to be phenomenal and can vie for an NFC championship. But I think they need to get off to a good start because Jordan Addison is going to be out the first, 3 games of the season due to suspension. I think Jordan Jefferson is dealing with a lagging leg injury or something like that, a nagging leg injury. So just to make sure that J.J. McCarthy gets off to a good start. That's why this team needs to get off to a good start, because J.J. needs to get off to a good start. Doesn't mean he has to throw for 350 yards a game. It just means they need to run the football, play good defense, which they will under Brian Flores in that pressure defense, and play football complementary style, which is what Kevin O'Connell likes to do. So I think the Vikings get off to a good start will do wonders for the confidence of J.J. McCarthy, which does wonders for this team and their chances to win the NFC. All right, what's my next question? What's the ceiling for the Packers? Honestly, I think the Packers can be a Super Bowl team in terms of their ceiling. And remember, by ceiling, I mean everything goes right. That means Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over like he's been doing, and that means their defense plays up to the potential that they have because they've done a great job drafting defensively. I've told you, I think the Packers defensively can be what the Chiefs have become in terms of their identity. But, guys, they would not have got Josh Jacobs for a reason because he's a bell cow. And I think if they would have trusted Josh Jacobs a lot more last year, they could have been in a better position even though they just lost in the divisional round, which is still a good season. Their offensive line is always top tier. They have a top-tier front office at Brian Gutekunst in terms of getting value, especially at the receiver position in the draft. Even though everybody wants them to draft the first-round receiver like Matthew Golden, which they did, they've gotten great value in the draft for the last however many years. Their transition from Rodgers to Jordan Love has been smooth, and this is a very good team. Ceiling-wise, they can win the Super Bowl. That all depends on how they want to operate, if Josh Jacobs is the bell cow, and if Jordan Love can stop making crucial mistakes when they need them the least. All right, what's the last question I have? And Dak Prescott play an MVP caliber type football in 2025? Absolutely. Have we forgotten that 2 years ago Dak Prescott finished second in MVP voting? And then he was hurt last year? So I think the Dak Prescott and the Joe Burrow conversations are phenomenal because Dak Prescott seems to do nothing right to so many people and Joe Burrow seems to do nothing wrong. And it's so funny because Dak Prescott has put up great numbers. But even in my estimation, team success goes along with that. This team has made it to the division round, but they haven't been to an NFC championship game in forever, and they haven't been to a Super Bowl, and that's what people hold against them. I get it. But Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. He's not elite in my estimation, so don't even ask me to go there, but Dak is very good. And the way that they've been able to solidify the outside, bringing in George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb, they've also done a great job drafting up front. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and they're going to be running back by committee, which means I think they're going to do something they haven't been able to do in the past couple of seasons is run the football. Because of those factors, he definitely can be an MVP caliber player, and I also think the Cowboys will be better, possibly a playoff team this year, which just helps his case. All right, when we come back from the break, championship defenses for teams that don't win a championship. Make it make sense. Back and move the chains right after this. And welcome back into the show. I want to thank everybody for being here today. And remember, the QR code is for you if you're hurting financially, physically, mentally, or spiritually. Check out the QR code and make sure you call Robert. All right, having said all that, it's time for my favorite segment of the show. And I'm about to go off because this is my side of the football that I really, really relate to. It's time for my nonsense narrative. Let's have a conversation. You and I, let's have a conversation. If a team doesn't win a championship, but yet you call them a championship defense, does that make sense? I'm seriously, I want to know because I've heard so many people with so many teams, the Ravens, whom are very good. And I'm not knocking these teams, guys, because they do have phenomenal defenses. The Ravens last year, the Broncos last year, right? They have phenomenal defenses. Who else do I have? All these teams that you're looking at on the screen right here, the Chargers, have a phenomenal defense. But why are we calling them championship-level defenses and they haven't won a championship? Do you call offenses that are very good, like the Bengals? Do the Bengals have a championship offense? No. They have a high-powered offense. They have an offense that can score a lot of points. They have an offense that puts up a lot of yards, but it's not a championship offense because they haven't won a championship. So at what point in time did this become a narrative? Philadelphia has a championship-level defense. You know why? Because I saw them smother the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a championship-level defense. You know why? Because I've seen them win back-to-back Super Bowls when they've had to change their identity and become a defense-first team along with running the football. So why are we in a situation? I think it's in a light to where we still want to call everybody elite. I think it's the participation era that we're in life. I truly believe that's what it is. Because every team has to be good. If every team's not good, if every team's not championship, if every team or person's not elite, we feel as if we're failing as a society. You're not. Stop giving teams and stop giving people accolades that they haven't earned yet. Tell me a defense is smothering. Tell me a defense is pressure-based. Tell me a defense has lockdown corners. Tell me a defense is great against the run. Tell me they're great against the pass. Tell me they're elite in getting sacks. Don't tell me they're a championship-level defense until they have the hardware. All right, that's all I have to say. I'm going to calm down, and I'm going to tell you that we're about to go to break, and there is a team that I just don't trust. And my producer told me I need to be a little nicer, and I said, nah, I can't do that. Back with the last segment of Move the Chains, right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chains, and now it's time for the final segment of the show. It's time for the final drive. I don't trust the Jaguars. They've got a lot of work to do. And I'm looking at Shaheed Khan now, the owner. I'm not even going to put all this on Trevor Lawrence, even though I know he's underperformed, in my opinion. It's not just him. They haven't gotten it right with Urban Meyer. They didn't get it right with Doug Peterson. And I just don't think they have any direction. They don't have any type of identity about themselves. And they're going to continue to struggle until they do. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch Move the Change right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you check out the page, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell. It's at Move_the_Chains. We're here for it. Hey, another banger as always. All right, for the best production crew in the business, I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And don't forget, check out that QR code and make sure you call Robert for more information. And until next time, right here on Move the Chains, God bless.